Welcome everyone to our spooky middle grade book club live for January. We are super excited to talk to author Shakirah Bourne all about the amazing Josephine Against the Sea. But first, let's find out what spooky friends we have with us today. Janet, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Wrong button. Hi, I'm Janet Fox. I'm the author of two spooky books. This one, Charmed Children of Brookskill Castle, and its companion novel, The Artifact Hunters, which came out in the middle of the pandemic. So go look for it. Both set in Scotland during World War II in a really creepy castle with lots of kids who are always in trouble. So look for those. Fun to be here tonight.
Awesome. And Ash, over to you.
Yeah, hi, I'm Ash Van Lauderdale. I am the author of Cattywampus and also A Touch of Ruckus, and both of them are kind of spooky books that take place in the fictional town of Howler's Hollow, which is in the Appalachian Mountains. And I'm so excited to be here tonight and talk about this amazing book.
Yes, I'm super excited to talk about this book. I'm excited to think of like the ocean, like the sea, some ocean vibes. I am needing some relaxing waves and whatnot. But first of all, let's head over to Shakirah and just tell us a little bit about yourself and about what led you to writing this amazing book.
Okay, hello. So this book is not exactly relaxing if you're thinking about the ocean, because I have written about something under the ocean that will kill you given the chance. So, my name is Shakirah Bourne, and I'm a Barbadian author and a filmmaker. And it's so funny, right? This book is one, Josephine Against the Sea, is a book that I would have loved to read when I was younger. So it's about 11-year-old Josephine, who is really overprotective of her dad. And so she creates booby traps to scare all his dates away. And her tricks work until her dad brings home this mysterious jewelry vendor who doesn't fall for any of Josephine's schemes at all. And then later on, Josephine realizes that she may not be human. So she has to use her cricket skills and persuade everyone of Maurice's true identity before she loses her dad forever. So this book is set in Barbados, first thing. And growing up, I read so many Goosebumps. I loved anything Goosebumps, Fear Street, like Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew. I was a big mystery lover. So I love when kids had to solve a mystery. I love when things were scaring them. I was a person, I made up scary stories all the time. In fact, my cousin, he is 30 now, and he still talks about how I scared him when he was about 6 years old, when I told him there was a baby under the bed. And I made up an entire story about this baby and how I had to rescue this child and use this magic incantation to save the child. It was and I really should use that somehow. But anyway, so he still talks about that to this day. So Josephine was really my opportunity to tell all the spooky stories that I heard growing up and made my own spin on it. So I had, in English class, I had read this short story about a fisherman who falls in love with a mermaid. And because it was a short story, like it just ended with the fisherman and the mermaid disappearing. Like all of his clothes were on the riverbank and no one ever saw him or the mermaid again. And it blew my mind because I needed to know what happened. Like, what if that fisherman had family? What if he had a daughter? Like, is it going to go down like that? Or are you just going to let your father be taken? Like, so when I had the opportunity to write a kid's book, immediately my mind snapped back to that story. And I was like, no, I need to write what happens, to that fisherman and tell it from the point of view of his very sassy and mischievous daughter.
That's so awesome. I love that inspiration. And I especially love, like you said, how mischievous Jo is and all of these pranks and whatnot. How she's like been able to scare away every other previous girlfriend with all of these pranks and whatnot. So I want you to talk more about that. I see we have another spooky friend who has like joined us though. So let's welcome Samantha Clark too. Hi.
I'm late. I was having computer issues, but I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. So yeah, Shakirah, can you tell us a little bit more about like these pranks, like Joe being this mischievous prankster, and maybe like what inspired that aspect of her character?
Yeah, so really, I love practical jokes growing up. As I told you, like I made up that story about the baby under the bed, and it was this big, elaborate story. I can still remember crawling under the bed to save the baby and being trapped. My sister and my cousin are on the bed screaming my name, trying to remember the incantation to save me and the baby. So I mean, I really put a lot of thought into that story, and I feel very proud of it. So I just like pranks. I enjoy doing that. My poor little sister has been on the receiving end of many of those pranks. So honestly, I had a ball writing Josephine, like sitting down trying to think about what practical jokes I could come up with to scare girlfriends. I actually, this is a good reminder, I actually wanted to do a little short story with the group of all the girlfriends that she scared away, like just talking about the things that she did to them because I love practical jokes so much, you know? So I guess I had a very short time to write this book because I originally wrote it because there was this competition. I had never written for kids before. So there was this competition and the deadline was in 3 weeks. And I was like, I need to write something. And so I really just wrote about my own experiences. So Josephine is kind of like a braver, a little bit more mischievous me.
Yeah, that is awesome. And I love that kind of, I mean, when you're writing for any audience, but especially when you're writing for kids, like I know I'm looking back and being like, what was I like at like 9 and 10 and 11? And that's kind of who I'm writing for. So I think that's really cool that you're able to like tell these stories. And Ash, I know you said you have some young readers who have like enjoyed these stories. So what did they love about it, or did they have any questions?
I'm trying to think about. A lot of people really liked Maurice, which was kind of shocking. Which way, like I love any type of mythological creature, any type of folklore, but they really enjoyed how she terrified people, which is kind of fun because, you know, in writing these horrors, well, this is not horror, at least I don't think so. Although a lot of adults told me they were scared. Kids have never, no kid has ever told me they were scared. So I just kind of really enjoyed that they liked it, and it kind of gave me the push to get darker in my next book. Some they liked the pranks. The kids always love the pranks. In fact, one kid told me that if her mom, her parents are alive and well, but she told me if her dad ever tried to bring a new woman into the house, she would dunk fish guts over his head. And I was like, oh my God, I am so sorry. I did not mean for this to happen, but apparently some children are becoming inspired and plotting for future stepmothers, which is not my intention. So I apologize right now. But mainly they're all just they just love the humor in it. So they all talk about, oh, it was so funny and it made them laugh and they love Josephine. That's the main feedback I've had from kids so far.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you're just inspiring a new generation of pranksters too. That's awesome.
That's not my intention.
So Ash, I know that you had some readers who love this book. Did they start pouring like fish guts like on anybody yet, or?
Oh, you know what? My family's kind of already there. That's kind of where we live. We're also pranksters and we love a good prank. But I think everyone kind of appreciated how, like, even in the heart of all of Josephine's pranks, you could see it was kind of like a test. It was like her litmus test. Like, she didn't want her dad to be alone forever. It wasn't like that. She wasn't being like jealous, like at the heart of it. Like, she she really seemed to want him not to get hurt. She was protecting him, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like I really appreciated that the nature of all of her pranks, like at the heart of them was like, you could possibly pass this test. This has to do with my family. Like the fish guts, like, can you handle it? If you can handle it, maybe you do deserve to be here. And I think we appreciated that. We were like, yes, absolutely. Like if you can handle that, then maybe you're good enough for my dad. I liked how intentional her pranks were.
Yeah.
I thought she did such a beautiful job writing that in.
That's a really good point. You know, she's not mischievous just because, you know, these pranks all have some meaningful intent behind them. And it's really that she has seen the trauma that her dad went through when her mom died. So she doesn't want to put him through that again. So she's really protecting him with these pranks. And as you said, he's a fisherman. If you can't handle the smell of fish guts, then maybe you need to look for another guy with a more suitable profession, you know? So it's not her just being mischievous for mischievous sake, you know, it's about her protecting her father. So that's really key, you know.
Yes, I love that part, and I love her relationship with her father too. But Samantha, you joined us late, so I want to give you a chance to pop in if you have a burning question for Shakirah.
I mean, Shakirah, I've told you this before. I absolutely adore this book, but one of the things that I really love about the book too is, you know, I haven't been to Barbados yet. It's definitely on my bucket list, but I was born in Guyana and I grew up in Jamaica and Cayman. And so having that Caribbean connection, like I could still see, even though I haven't been to Barbados, I could still see parts. And the fact that Josephine's dad is from Guyana, like there were certain things that he had the certain phrases that he used that you know, like I've heard in my family talking about, and that was really, really cool for me. And I loved all the little cultural parts that you put into the book. I mean, the cricket, you know, you just, especially in most middle grade books that you know, that we read nowadays, cricket isn't really in there. But I grew up, you know, my dad played cricket all the time when I was growing up. And it was always on TV. He still talks about cricket. And so, you know, just having all those little things. And I love too that it was a girl who was playing cricket and that she wanted to play on that team. And that was very important. It was brilliant. I love the way you weaved all of these things in just so beautifully. The world was just, it was fantastic. Wonderful.
Thank you so much. So I have so much to respond. So I have a story about cricket first, but before I get to that, I did remember a kid messaging me about, this is the first time they saw their how they grew up in a middle grade book like this in terms of fantasy, because we do have a lot of realistic fiction, but when it comes to fantasy, you know, not so much. So I love that you're Guyanese. I have dubbed myself an honorary Guyanese because my two or three of my best friends are from Guyana.
Yes.
And, yes. And so because I don't have a choice. The culture is around me. The food is around me. So
that's right.
You know, on Christmas Day, I'm still eating pepper pot. I'm still having the garlic pork. All the Guyanese food is so important to me. So I have dubbed myself an honorary Guyanese because of that. So even my Guyanese best friend, she proved that language because I was like, I want dad to be from a fishing town in Guyana. And so she was like, Berbice. So she ran it by some her friends in Berbice, and they vetted the language for me and everything. So I'm really excited when Guyanese read the book and like it, because I was like,
I've told all my family about it, so they should all be buying it.
Girls, hopefully, you know, it's so hard because I'm not from Guyana. So I want to make sure that I get everything right. So every time like somebody tells me, "Oh, this is great," is correct representation, I'm like, okay, good. Good. You know, I don't want to be chewed up by the Guyanese. They do it very well.
They do.
It's okay. In terms of cricket, so remember I said that I put a lot of myself into this book. So I became a cricket fan when I was about 15. And to me, it was before then, it was the most boring game on the planet. I could not understand why everyone was so fascinated by a game that took 5 days to end. Like that seems like crazy to me. So one day I was coming out and I saw my stepdad watching a cricket match on TV, and he's one of those very stoic personas. He doesn't show much emotion, and he was just so hyper. His face was so animated, and I was like, "What is going on?" And it was like a really intense part of the match, and I got drawn in because of him, not because of the match. Because in my opinion, cricket is the most boring thing ever. So cricket unites the Caribbean, every country in the Caribbean. When it comes to West Indies cricket, that is the one time we see full integration and an entire region just rooting for a team. And so I really wanted to capture that in the book. And as I got older, I started watching cricket a lot more. I became so invested that I actually had to stop watching the game. Like I felt like I would get a heart attack sometimes. And when they lost, I would run outside and fall to my knees and scream into a void, and then someone would respond, "We know, we know." So, and that has happened. Yeah, yes. Exactly. So I had to start watching cricket, but I still wanted to be part of the game. So I tried to learn how to play. So I figured, oh, it can't be that hard. So I joined this girls' cricket team at my university, because at my school then there was no cricket team. So I had to wait a couple of years to audition. And I swear the coach just kind of knocked the ball at me, and I cut my hands to catch the ball. And it stung so hard that all my palms went red. And I was like, "Thank you very much." And I just rolled the ball back to her and left, because there was no way I was going to play cricket with a bat, someone using a bat to hit a ball at me. If a gentle toss caused me this much angst, no way. So Josephine is doing what I wish I could have done, because I think that if I had maybe tried out for cricket when I was about 11 or even younger, maybe I would have been a little more brave. But as a young adult, there is no way I was going to welcome that pain into my life.
I love it. It's a hard ball. It really is. I love that. I love that you tried it, though. I never had the guts, as a kid. I never had the guts to play. We used to, just as friends, play with the ball, and it was, that was about as far as we got. So I love that you auditioned. That's awesome.
Yeah, I did, but it didn't last very long. It was quite embarrassing.
Understandable.
I love that story. And oh boy, cricket. It does sound like you'd have to be brave. And like you said, one of the great things about these stories is that we can write characters that are like us, but just a little bit braver. I love that aspect of middle grade and of all kinds of stories. But Janet, you haven't had a chance yet. So I want to give you a chance to ask a question. I know there's too many burning questions, but let me send it your way.
Yeah, you've already answered my major burning question, which was, did you play cricket? I just loved that whole aspect of the story, especially for a girl to play cricket. It was like powerful and made her character really rich and resonant for me. And also, I think it's really great for boy readers to see her playing cricket. So that was my number one burning question. But I have others, and my other second question, you've kind of hinted at it, is that I was really equivocal about Marissa. I didn't like her, and then I did kind of like her, and then I didn't. I mean, she kind of empowered Joe's dad. She gave him, he was suddenly healthier, and he had no aches and pains, and she was doing a lot of good things, but also I had the feeling that something could go really bad here. Yes. And I wondered how you kind of dealt with that. It's a wonderful way to play with an antagonist, to make them likable. And you really did make her likable, even though she's definitely the antagonist. Yeah.
So Maurice, that's such an excellent question. I'm going to try to answer this without taking the entire night. So when I did my first draft of this book, I knew a little bit about Caribbean folklore. I knew about, there's a character called Mama Glo, who is a half woman, she could be half fish or half snake, depending on the storyteller. And she can either take care of the fish in the sea, or in the ocean, sorry, not the ocean, the river, or she is a person who, if you see her in the forest, you know that you're dead because she will kill you. So when I originally wrote Josephine, Maurice was less morally gray. You know, it was clear she was a clear villain, clear. But then I started doing my research into the folklore. Right, I realized that okay, so a lot of this folklore is rooted in African folklore. There's a bigger pantheon of goddesses called the Mami Wata. There are people who worship her. Some people worship her. She has all of these dynamic qualities. She's unpredictable. She can be a villain or a hero with a flip of a coin, maybe in the same minute. And so I started to fall for my villain. It was terrible because now I had a problem because I had already written her as my villain. And then I fell for my villain because then I started thinking, okay, so, why is she like this? How did she appear? What did she need from dad? What are her ulterior motivations? Like, who wronged her? Who wronged her in the past? And Marie started to grow. And as I continued to revise, I realized that I started putting all of this backstory that I created in my head that was never intended to go into the book. I started putting it in. And that's because I wanted her to more represent the roots of the character a little bit more, So I wanted to show how Maurice was both good and bad for her dad. And it's her will. It's up to her. And I really enjoyed writing the character like that, where the villain was not a clear villain. In fact, I can give you a spoiler now. In the next book, she really helps. She really helps Josephine. So I really wanted to put in some of that to have a true representation of the folklore and the mythology, but also because it's so much fun because you just never know what she's gonna do. And that's a great thing about writing like suspense, or if you're writing thrillers. If you have a villain who is so unstable that you don't know if they're going to help you or kill you from one scene to the other, that to me that is thrilling. So I really enjoyed. To me, I fell for my. I swear, at one point, Joe was being her hard-headed, stubborn, mischievous self, and I was like, I can see why Maurice is really pissed at you. And I think that if anybody look at it from the perspective of Maurice, they could understand, how she is. She originally came to help. She didn't come to harm them. She didn't at all. She came to help. And so it's like, I'm trying to help your dad heal, and you keep getting in the way. So eventually she's gonna, I just need to get rid of you, pesky human, because she's a goddess, So it's like, she's not looking at Josephine as her equal. So I really wanted to have that thread in the story. I know some people were not very happy. Some people were not very happy because some people like to know clear villains and see clear villains' intention. But I really wanted to show a complex villain in this book. So I hope that it came off.
You did. And I mean, on the one hand, she disappears. I can't know how to pronounce her Joe's friend's name. His cat. And on the other hand, Simba. And on the other hand, she helps a woman get pregnant who couldn't get pregnant. And so I just loved that sort of those different sides of her. And it was an interesting way to present the antagonist in such a nuanced fashion. I loved it. So you did well.
Yeah, and thank you. In the original mythology, she does cure infertility, for those who worship her. And a lot of people come to worship her because of that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that she's so powerful. This like really powerful, complicated woman that we can root for, but at the same time she's just totally like gaslighting Joe the whole time. And so it's also this kind of like complicated dynamic which we kind of see, like we're familiar with it in children's fiction, where the the child, the main character, is the only one that can truly see what is going on. And that's what happens in this story. And so we're just like, why? You know, why can nobody else see this? And like, she is the only one. But I love that about this story. And it's kind of, you know, how she has to find a way to make this truth known, or to like solve it herself, because nobody else can see the truth that's out there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of relevant today too, because kids are having to find ways to like find their own truths instead of like solve things by themselves. So
although her best friend does get on board, even when he didn't believe her at first, he was still on board. But then, you know, she persuaded him, so she did have some help after a while. But I gotta say, like, my editor Mallory,
and so who is also my editor for 3 of my books, which is so fun. Like,
Mallory's a little sadist. Because in the original stuff, like, she didn't go through quite so much angst, like, and in the last like 48 hours of the second half of the book, that poor girl goes through so much, and Mallory is like, torture. Mallory, love you if you're listening.
That's so funny. That's so funny, because on the, you know, there's Mallory, our editor, as Classic, has this side where she's like the sweetest person that you could ever meet, and then there's this other side where she's like, but you know, yeah, I have to say, like, if you read my first book, the ending of it like was different. I mean, it was still a tearjerker, but like there's one part that she persuaded me to make even like,
like, no, you must torture them, like make them go through a lot.
Yeah, so that's really funny. I love that. Well, and so you mentioned like this is one of your first times working with children's books, but you've done a lot of other stuff. Like, looking at your website, like I know you've done all of these amazing films and like short stories. So you're into like the literary fiction and the screenwriting and all of this. And so you mentioned this contest that kind of brought you to children's writing, but how has this experience been different from the other types of writing that you've done before?
Okay, so much. I don't even know where to start. First thing, like, I've written for adults most of my life, so it was really hard for me at first to first thing, I always was able to go into the mind of a child. Like, even my short stories, I would be talking about adult themes, but from the point of view of a child. So I always had that voice in my head. But several times, I think I had to learn to write simply but powerfully, if that makes sense. Because, like, you can't, like, the first word that comes to my head is always maybe a more complex word for the age range. So then I have to sit and think about, okay, so how do I say this so that my 8-year-old godson can understand? And then I can't just say it and explain it. I need to say it in a way that is still great to read, and, you know, it's still like, you know, so I really sucked for me, because I would take so long to write a chapter, right? And then I would read over the chapter and it would read in like 30 seconds. And I was like, you should not be reading this simply for all of the work and time that I put into writing you, you know? So to me, writing for kids is really hard. One of the things that I encountered, this is not so good, is I felt like a lot of people didn't respect how hard it was to write for kids, how hard it was to make sure you get over a point, make sure you maintain interest, and then still keep it engaging. You still have to do so much when you're writing for children all at once. So like with screenwriting, I just have to think, okay, be visual. Think about how this would play out on screen, you know. Dialogue is catchy. That doesn't change with any of the genres, but with kids, I really had to think about comprehension along with quality, and that was really tough for me. And so it really irked me when some people, in the other forms of writing, would make it seem like it was so easy to write for kids, and I was like, this is the hardest thing out of all. I've done screenplays, movies, musicals, like plays, adult literary fiction, and this is the hardest thing for me. So it felt really frustrating to get that kind of feedback. So what else? I had to censor myself. I had to censor myself for sure. Sometimes I didn't know when it was too much. So I find like with adult literary, because that's my main background, I went heavy on setting up stuff. So I had a lot more description. So I had to learn to get to the point very quickly. And I don't know what to say, but I started reading an adult book this evening. And I was like, why are you taking so long? Why are you taking so long to get to your point? Like, I don't need to know all of this. So I kind of, writing for kids has made me a little bit more of an impatient reader. I don't know how true that is. Those are the main things coming to mind. But I can tell you that screenwriting in particular really helped with writing for kids, because I was a pantser when I was coming to fiction writing. I didn't have a plan, but with screenwriting, I can't do that. I always plotted out the entire thing, made sure I had my acts clear, knew all my turning points. But when I was entering the competition, I only had 3 weeks, so I had no time to pants. So I plotted out Josephine like I would a screenplay. Little did I know that was the key to writing books all this time, So I found that the writing for film and writing short fiction in particular, because I had practiced the voice of writing for kids, it really helped Josephine. But it was still a transition. And honestly, I'm still, like, even with the book I'm writing now, I'm still, I still have to work really hard to work on making sure the voice is clear and the language is clear, and, it's still exciting.
Yeah, no, I love all of that. I see everybody is nodding at everything, and it's so true. Like, it's that simple but powerful. And I think we've all experienced that feedback where you have the person that isn't a big middle grade reader, and they don't view it as like important as other forms of literature. But we know, like, just because you're making it engaging for kids doesn't mean it's not important. And it's that special skill of how can you make it at the same time, like, simple and straightforward and important and powerful at the same time. It's all a skill. So I see everybody nodding. I want to give y'all a chance to get your questions in too. So so go ahead and dive in so I don't take every single burning question.
So I thought that you did such a good job. I know you were talking about having to write a bit more simply. And I know that is kind of like a puzzle going into it. Like you're saying, I know you want to make the language beautiful and impactful, but also simple enough for like your nephew to understand, like you said. But something that I was so impressed with that you did is that your world building and sense of place and strong sense of, like, I don't think there's anyone in the story who isn't a character in their own right? Like, everyone has these like kind of outsized personalities that really pop off the page. And being able to do that and build such colorful worlds in such a short period of time is really a gift. Like, it takes a lot of effort, but also it takes like a really clear understanding of what does this world look like? What is this person like? I especially loved the neighbor's mom. I'm gonna forget her name. Miss Mo. I loved her. She's my favorite character. I love her superstition. I love how busy she is. I love that she's always smelling like what she's been cooking in the last little bit. Like, I just love her. She's so colorful. And I wondered if you feel like being a screenwriter to begin with and thinking more in terms of visuals made it easier for you to be able to do that and to make I'm also like a really visual writer. Like, I imagine it in my head and then I have to translate it. So did you draw a lot of inspiration or from your experience as a screenwriter, do you think, in order to make everything pop as much as you did?
Well, one thing is I have colorful characters all around me. So I did have real life inspiration. Like, for example, Miss Mo is like an amalgamation of all of the aunties and grannies in my life.
I love that. I hoped that was the answer. I love that so much.
Who all have that superstitious streak. Like that story about I remember one time I borrowed a bag from my stepmom. Yes, I could call her name. She's not going to watch this,
Yeah.
right? And I saw these black-eyed peas in the bag, so I thought that a bag of peas burst in, and I was like, why are there peas in this bag? And she was like, leave my peas. No,
Don't
this
touch
is a very gentle person. Like, she doesn't really raise her voice. So when she was like, leave my peas, I was like, okay. And then later on, my friend told me, oh, she believes that it wards off bad spirits. So that is actually true.
Nice.
All of these little superstitious things, I just kind of exaggerated. And so that is where I got from screenwriting. Because okay, so I know that some people create character biographies. So you fill out that character bio sheet of all different flaws and weaknesses, greatest possessions. So I like doing that. But when I'm in a rush, I normally just pick 2 words, like 2 positive things about the person and 1 negative, or if they're a villain, 2 negative and 1 positive. And I kind of rate them at the top of the page. So if a person is loyal, brave, but insecure, and then I try to make sure that everything that I have written about them and everything that they do kind of reflect those 3 words. So I call it like my cheat character creation because it's really easy to do because you just pick 3 and you have to make sure that one of them is contradictory in some way, and because that makes it interesting. And so then in screen, there's a moment when you first see a character on the page, and it's the memorable moment because how this person is displayed on screen shows you who they are in the first minute or so. So when I'm writing a character, then I try to think about, okay, so how can I introduce this character so that I'm showing who they are at the very beginning. So that was it. And so honestly, with the side characters, sometimes if I just want people to laugh, I may be like, okay, so this person is really superstitious, or this person is a little bit eccentric. So everything they do is gonna be eccentric. Yes. And I always say is there's no such thing as too much personality. And if you have too much personality, it's easier to remove personality than to put personality in. So yeah.
I love that. Well, it paid off. It's fantastic. And I feel like everyone needs a Miss Mo in their life because she's the best.
I love her so much. Honestly, I have to think about where I'm going to carry her because of my infatuation with Maurice. This was never intended to be a series. Never. Like I was quite horrified when I realized I got an idea for this to be a series, because I was like, I don't write series. But it just kept growing. And then I pitched it to my editor and my agent, and they were like, ooh. So then I wrote the outline and it all came. So it's in the next book, Akai is actually kidnapped by the Heartman, and Josephine has to travel to his lair with her half-sister to save him. Oh,
I love it.
So
there's a half-sister.
There is a half-sister.
I'm excited. I'm all excited now.
That, and I'm quite horrified because the book was almost going to print when I got that idea. So I was like, what are you doing, Shakirah? Let this book go. But so I am reading the sequel.
I'm excited. Lucky us. Good for us.
I'm excited because I love Akai. That was my next question was, I have a child who's on the spectrum. So I love the fact that he's autistic, but also communicating in such a unique and interesting way. So what was your inspiration for writing about him?
So I love Akai so much, so much. Because, he is one of those characters that appeared on the page. I had no intent. I did not sit down and plan for Josephine to have a friend like Akai. I remember it because as I was, drafting in those 3 weeks, I got to a scene and I was like best friend and neighbor Akai, and then he appeared and he was like that. And I was like, whoa, hold on. What spectrum? Hold on. I did not ask for this. So then I was like, no, you need to go and do research because, I am not on the spectrum. So I was like, hold on. Where did you come from? And why are you so perfect? So I had to stop. I had to do some more research. I had to talk to my friend who's a psychologist. to think about, if this stuff is possible, how may he react. And so he is someone who grew on the page, honestly. And then I just knew that I wanted, Josephine is a loner, and I wanted two people who completely accepted each other for who they are, and there was no question about it, at all. And so that was really important for me to show Akai still having fun, still going on these adventures, and his the fact that he was on the spectrum was not like a big plot point for him. It was more like, oh, my best friend is living with a potential murderer. So what am I gonna do? So
well, you got it right. You got it so right.
I'm so glad.
Yes.
I was so nervous. We got a sensitivity reader for that as well, but I was really nervous because honestly, Akai was not planned. He was not planned, but he brought so much. I love him so much, mainly because he was not planned.
Yeah. Well, he's perfect. You got it right.
Good.
Research counts.
Good. That's good to know, because I was very nervous.
Yeah. You gotta just run with those characters, though. You gotta run with those character decisions, and you've done that really beautifully. Like with both Marissa and Akai. For my book Arrow, it was kind of a similar thing. Arrow has a limb difference, one hand, and people ask me, well, why did you write Arrow with only one hand? He's the only human to be in a rainforest. And I'm like, well, that's the way he came, and I'm going to honor the character the way he came. And we got sensitivity readers. I wrote the book as much as I could, and then we got sensitivity readers, expert readers, with the specific same limb difference that he had to read everything, and it helped enormously. It really did. But I love that you did that. The character just came like that, and you honored the character, and then, got the help you needed to make sure that character was the best representation.
Yes.
So my additional question is, I am so in awe that you wrote this book in 3 weeks. And, but then how much did you have to do
revision?
Right after that, and how much did a lot of the book change? Did a lot of it stay the same?
So you see my face, right? So I may have written it. So what I wrote in 3 weeks was a 28,000 word book, right?
Oh, wow.
It was like the bones of this. It was the bones. And I had no idea what I was doing. I was just enjoying myself. So when I first queried it, I queried it as YA, because in my head it's for kids, so it's YA. So I sent query letters saying, please represent my 28,000 young adult book with 10-year-old Josephine. So I did that. But I wrote this book in trees, but then that was 2017, and I had to revise it for about 2 years, because when I got my agent, she asked me to add at least 10,000 words onto it, and I had nothing about Josephine's school life in it. I don't even think Miss Aline, who's her teacher, she was not in it at all. Casper was not in it as well. So she asked me to add 10,000 words. And then when we went on sub, I actually had to do a revise and resubmit. And so I had to revise the first 4 or 5 chapters. So by the time the finished copy is now 61,000 words compared to that 28,000 word draft that I did. And that was a little bit shocking for me, now that you talk about differences, because I was not a revision person. I was like a plan, or I would write the first draft of something and be like, oh, this sounds good, I'm done. Because, I had self-published my books before, or it was short stories, so the editors would just give a little bit of feedback. But I was not accustomed to the amount of revision that you have to do with these books, with books in general, not just kids, with books, because, I had never written a book before. So that was shocking. That was really shocking. I'm still dealing
a lot of revision, but it came out so beautifully, and the layers that you put into it through that process is just fantastic. Really, really fantastic.
I'm glad that I had to revise, because my editor asked me valid questions. Why is Maurice doing this? And in doing that research, trying to answer those questions, is how I found out more research. I found the roots and realized, oh my gosh, there's so much more to this folklore. There's so many more things I can do with her character. So, if it wasn't for a revision, the book would not be what it is today, for sure.
And Marissa is, when you were talking about it earlier on too, I was muted, but I really wanted to say, like, because you had the good and the bad of her, she's much more of a 3D character. And I much prefer it when the antagonist is, a much more of a 3D character and much better developed. And that's definitely the case with Marissa,
and
which I really love.
And it was important for me that she be the villain, because I didn't want it to be a case where, at the end it was like, oh, this person wasn't a villain after all. They come and say, no, you pissed her off. She wants to kill you. I wanted to make that very clear. But I also want you to understand, like, why. Like, she really had to push past her limit. So I didn't want it to be a case where, because there's some books, and I love those books, mind you, where the monster turns out not to be a monster after all. No, you piss her off, she will kill you.
Yeah.
It was important to me to have that, but also to show that, that was not her original intention.
Yeah. Well, she's a full-blooded character. And there's that saying, that even villains are the heroes of their own story. Yes. And for Marissa, that is so true. And that's what I think really makes that character something that readers can, really follow and believe and fall in love with,
Well, fingers crossed that they want to. I gotta say, you guys are really good for building up my confidence as I write the second book, because sometimes you really wonder if you know what you're doing at all. So thank you.
You do. I can't wait for the second book.
I can't wait for this second book.
I'm on board. If you need a beta reader, I'm on board.
I'm ready. Get in line,
Samantha. I will for sure, because with this book, as I told you, I love horror so much. But I have never intentionally tried to write horror. Like, when people told me Josephine was getting a little scary, I was like, no, you want to see scary? I'll show you scary. So then with that, I kind of wrote the second book, which is about a filmmaker, again, who follows her brother to this silent retreat on a mysterious island to find out that they're haunted by faceless children. And faceless children are duendes in Caribbean folklore. They're children who have died before they're baptized. So, like, I'm writing that and I'm trying to decide, okay, so is this too dark? Am I going too far? And I'm relying on Valerie to tell me.
So, you're not going too far. You're not.
I have heard that, thanks to you all, reading your books and, like, listening to you talk, I realized, kids really want it all. Is just really to not scare the gatekeepers too much that they wouldn't give them to the kids.
I remember with my first book, this one, The Boy, the Boat, and the Beast, both my mother and my grandmother read it, and both of them said, "This is a very good book, Sam, but it's really more for adults. It'll be way too scary for kids." I'm like, no, believe me, it'll be just fine for kids.
Yeah.
They like it, We always underestimate kids, but kids are a lot smarter, a lot more savvy than we think.
That's good to hear.
They're going to love it. They're going to love round 2 for Josephine and what Marissa's done in store.
This one is not in Josephine's world. This one is actually just on this mysterious Caribbean island. It has no name. Well, it has a name. It's called Duppy Island. So
Duppy Island. Oh my gosh.
So I'm glad that you said, oh my gosh, because when I Googled Duppy Island to see if there were any books out, I saw this Google something about, it was an interview with you, and I was like, oh, Samantha has a Duppy Island. Okay. Okay, cool. But yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. Solidarity on the Duppy Island.
They're the same universe. I love it.
That's awesome.
There's so many parallels going on tonight. It's amazing. And when you're talking about the process for writing your book, I was thinking about my first book. with Mallory, the same editor. I wrote the first draft of this one in 2 weeks, sitting in my dog's dog bed every morning before work. And the first draft was 27,000 words long. And then through the editorial process, it ended up being like 58,000 words. So it's like so funny to hear these parallels like in the process. I think that's just, like if you can, it's a great process actually for me. Like if you can get this idea out, like even if it's in a bare bones form, like in that sort of time frame, and you have it to work with, and you can go back to it and like flesh it out. I think that's a beautiful way to do it. Like I don't always do it that way, but sometimes I wish I would. But
yeah, like with this one for sure, I could not do it in 3 weeks. Like I don't know, it was really difficult. I don't know if it was pandemic. I don't know if it was me not writing about a place I didn't know, or I wasn't familiar enough with the world, or I didn't know the characters. I don't know what it was, but it took me a really long time to get out the first draft. So I'm hoping that in the future I have more books like Josephine where you can crank it out and then fix it up.
Yes, it's so nice. I love when it works that way, but it's always changing. Well, I do want to remind people who are watching that if you have a burning question, get that in, because we are just getting close to our time here. So get your last final question in first, Shakirah. But maybe we should go around and do kind of a fun question for everyone. I don't know if we've done this before, but we probably should. So why don't you tell me from your books, if you could take one of your characters on an amazing vacation with you, what character would it be and where would you go? How about that? I'm thinking of the ocean today, but I don't know if I would go to the ocean. This is like a really tough question. But Sam, we've learned about like Duffy Island and like all of these different places you listed. Do you want to get us started? Like, where would you go and what character would you take?
Where would I go and what character would I take? I don't know. There's quite a few. I think the character I would probably take is Patari from Arrow, because I kind of want to be her. She's brave and just she's just like, a go-getter, which I am so not, and I kind of want to be Patari. So I'd probably take Patari. And I love the beach, but I probably want to go to the rainforest. Yeah, probably want to go to the rainforest, I think, because I love that part of it even more, I think.
Okay, I love it. It sounds like a good trip.
It would be fun.
Janet, you have a lot of things that are set in Scotland with your books. So are you going to stick to Scotland, or are you going to take a character somewhere different?
Well, that's a great question, because I'm going to Scotland again next fall, hopefully, if it all works out. Yeah, I really loved writing Isaac's story in The Artifact Hunters, but I also really loved playing with Amelie's story, that she was starting to blossom as a character for me in The Artifact Hunters. So this next book that I'm kind of noodling around yet would focus on her journey, and then some other new kids in the same environment. But where would I take Amelie if I were to take her on vacation? I might take her to Middle Europe somewhere. I'm thinking Switzerland, because I just see her as a mountain girl. So, and I love the mountains myself. I live in the mountains here, but I think putting her in the mountains and then having something really creepy come out of a cave, something like that.
Ooh, why am I suddenly picturing myself like eating my way out of a giant block of Swiss cheese? Is this me, or like, I don't know why this is the first thing that comes to my mind, but like that would be amazing. I love it. Ash, what about you? You have a very unique, like cozy settings for both of your books. Would you do something similar or something totally different?
Oh my goodness. So the character I would definitely take with me is Fox Sanchez Griffith, the one with a flashlight. So this character has the ability to see ghosts and help other people see ghosts too if they're touching you. And they also love trying new food and are generally like free spirited and daredevilish. So I think that Fox and I would have to go to New Orleans because I've never been before. And I feel like it would be so much fun to. I'm from the South and I've been to a lot of places in the South, but not actually New Orleans. So I would love to go there and we could listen to jazz and try a lot of new, wonderful, amazing food. And then we would go to all the traditionally haunted places in New Orleans and see if they're actually haunted together. And that would be an absolute blast. So that's the plan. Now I'm kind of sad I can't actually do that.
I love that.
I know. It's like, I think we all want to come now. And I love New Orleans. I went to college in New Orleans. It's like the most awesome, interesting city. I love it. It's not like anywhere else. So great answer. Shakirah, what about you?
I wanted to honeymoon in New Orleans, but then, COVID got really complicated and it was, all right, you know what, don't bother. That was in August. I got married in August. So I was like, oh, darn. I really wanted to go, but that sounds amazing. So, so it's funny, Janet. So I actually lived in Scotland for a year. And so I call it my second home. Is a place that I would love to live like half the time. So ideally, my goal is to spend half my time in Scotland and Edinburgh and half my time in Barbados. So because of the pandemic and not being able to travel, I have not been for a while and I really, really miss it. So I would take a Kai, not to Edinburgh though. Well, maybe Edinburgh, but I really loved Sir Walter Scott's home. Because I was like, okay, so he is a writer who was able to build a castle off of the money he made from his books. And I was like, he's an inspiration. So Josephine, I know, would be a handful. She would be too active and exhausting for me to deal with. But okay, we could sit down in Sir Walter Scott's library and read. And I think that's a pretty awesome way to reconnect with my second home because I really miss it.
Yeah, I cannot wait to go. And we're doing a walking tour across the Highlands.
And I love their ghost tours, like going,
I know.
Gosh, and the, not Undercity, blah, 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 blah. Edinburgh Underground, like the underground passageways and everything.
Yes.
I loved it. I love that.
Yes.
So,
and our son is going with us too. So he wants to visit all the haunted castles.
I got this historic Scotland pass. So I can't remember. I think it was like £50 and it gave you access to most of the castles. So on weekends, because I went for university, so on weekends we would just pick a castle to travel to and we would go and just explore it. It was the best.
Love it. I can't wait.
That's awesome.
Wow. Yeah, we all need to go explore some castles and hang out in the New Orleans graveyards and do all of that stuff really soon. Oh, I love it. Well, let's see. For me, the first thing that came to mind was because my main character in this book, Hello Future Me, is obsessed with Bigfoot, and it's not the main storyline of this one, but we learned that her grandmother is like this famous Bigfoot researcher, and her little small town where she lives is supposedly the Bigfoot sighting capital of the world. And so I think I would love to go on like overnight like Bigfoot camping trip with June, and we just like stay out all night in the complete darkness, like listening for Bigfoot and stuff, and it would be super fun, and hopefully we'll encounter something creepy. We will see. But that would be my thing. Well, I just
that sounds fun.
I know, right? We all need to go camp out in the woods sometimes to tell ghost stories. That's for sure.
Yes.
in a haunted castle in Scotland. Let's make this happen. Okay. But I want to give a huge thank you to everyone for joining tonight to celebrate this amazing book, Josephine Against the Sea. So if you haven't read it yet, go out and get your copy, and you have to read it. It is awesome, and a huge thank you to all of our guests, and especially Shakirah Bourne for joining us today.
Thank you.
So much.
You all were awesome.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it's a wonderful book.
It really is, Shakirah. Well done. Can't wait
Yeah.
for the second one.
Me too.
Yes, we will be waiting super anxiously for this book. I love it. And I also want to let everyone know that our book for next month is The Ghoul of Windy Down Vale by Jake Burt. So get ready for our book club next month. I hope y'all can join us. And thanks again. I'm going to play us out on a little song with the date for next month. But thanks again, everyone, for joining us.